right, that's 10:02 here in Raleigh. Let's go ahead and get rolling. Welcome to the September Web Forum for the Southeast Conservation Adaptation Strategy, or SECAS partnership. As always, I'm your host. My name is Hillary Morris, and I do user support and communications for the Southeast Conservation Blueprint. SECAS hosts this web forum on the third Thursday of every month right here at 10 a.m. Eastern Time as an opportunity to share the latest updates on the blueprint, get input and involvement from folks like y'all, and highlight exciting science and action in the world of landscape conservation in our region. So here's our agenda today. I'll start by introducing our monthly speakers. They'll present for 30 to 40 minutes or so. We'll have time for Q&A and discussion at the end, and then I'll wrap up with a preview of next month's webinar and a few updates from your SECAS staff. You can probably see that we are recording, and I do that just for the handful of folks who wanted to attend but had a conflict, so just be aware you'll see that recording going. So not hearing any questions, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm very pleased to have Michelle Covi and Addie Thornton here today representing the Southeast Regional Partnership for Planning and Sustainability, or SERPPAS. SERPPAS is a partnership that works at the intersection of the military mission, working lands, and conservation across 6 Southeast states. Addie is the coordinator of SERPPAS, and Michelle is the leader of their Coastal Resilience and Regional Adaptation Work Group, fondly known as the CROG. And she serves as the Coastal Resilience Department of Defense Liaison for Georgia Sea Grant. So today they're going to be presenting on SERPPAS's amazing work to assist installations, defense communities, and partners with climate resilience, and share some of their success stories and challenges in working across sectors. So Michelle and Addie, you can go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Addie Thornton, and I am a program director at the Texas A&M Natural Resources Institute. But as Hillary mentioned, a primary role of mine is serving as the coordinator for SERPPAS, the Southeast Regional Partnership for Planning and Sustainability. But I am physically located here in Raleigh, North Carolina, so not too far from many of the SECAS Blueprint user support team. I'm excited to be here today. We see great value in SECAS, the partnership and the conservation blueprint, and opportunities like this to share across our networks is a great way to build on our collaborations. So I'll start with more of an overview of SERPPAS just to get everyone kind of oriented with our partnership, and then I'm excited to hand it over to Michelle, as Hillary mentioned, who leads our Coastal Resilience and Regional Adaptation Working Group, and she'll go into a little bit further detail about some of our climate resilient efforts. So as you may know, the Southeast U.S. is home to a large military presence and contributes to national security through the important land, sea, and airspace needed for realistic training and testing. The military is an economic driver for many communities within these states, as well as a significant landowner and steward of natural resources in the region. This landscape also includes several biodiversity hotspots. It supports a wide range of unique and important ecosystems and industries, and is predominantly privately owned. So because of this, the Department of Defense's mission is influenced by many factors outside of its control. And many of these encroachment factors, such as increasing urban development, land use change, and climate change, impact more than just the defense mission. So realizing the scale of these challenges at the inaugural meeting in 2005, the SERPPAS principles came together around a common vision, a sustainable Southeast. So through a signed charter, leaders from state, environmental, and natural resource agencies, the Department of Defense, each of the military services, and other federal agencies established a regional forum to foster better communication and coordination among federal, state, and local stakeholders across this 6-state region. The fully realized vision of SERPPAS is a partnership of Southeastern state, military, and federal agencies working together to sustain and advance national defense, natural resource conservation, climate resilience, and working lands in support of the communities and economies that depend on them. SERPPAS principals, the highest level of leadership in the partnership, are leaders from these member agencies seen on the screen. Participation in SERPPAS is voluntary and is driven by the values and the benefits that working collaboratively together across the region provides. Each principal designates a steering committee member to represent them and makes up kind of the staff level of the partnership. And then SERPPAS also engages with many external partners beyond the state and federal agencies through each of our 5 working groups. And those are organized around the strategic plan. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And this next graphic just kind of helps visualize that organizational structure for the partnership. So as agreed on by these principals, the SERPPAS mission is to seize opportunities and solve problems in value-adding ways that provide mutual and multiple benefits to the partners. SERPPAS accomplishes this by minimizing incompatible development near military lands, increasing coordination and partnerships, utilizing data-rich and GIS-based maps to identify priorities, and developing policy initiatives that promote innovative projects that support the SERPPAS priorities, and those priorities being military readiness, conservation, working lands, and climate resilience. At the time SERPPAS was formed, these partner agencies were considered unconventional partners, meaning they had not necessarily worked closely together, and in some cases were even in conflict with each other. So it was really important early on to establish a partnership that focused on relationships. So through inspiration from the best-selling book, Getting to Yes, SERPPAS partners were encouraged to understand each other's interests, consult before deciding, use persuasion rather than coercion, be easy on the people but hard on the issues, and to focus on interests and not positions. So with the help of these guiding principles, SERPPAS has established that building effective working relationships founded on trust, combined with the use of a good map, will inform good policy and project decisions. And those are the foundational pillars for the partnership that we still implement today. So there are 2 primary tools that SERPPAS uses to put that mission into action. The first being our SERPPAS strategic plan. So the strategic plan provides the framework for identifying and implementing collaborative solutions to various challenges affecting national defense. There are 5 focus areas as seen on the screen, and over its lifetime, SERPPAS has contributed significantly to many accomplishments in these areas. With an early focus on longleaf pine, SERPPAS contributed to red cockaded woodpecker and gopher tortoise species efforts, contributing to species recovery. SERPPAS has been instrumental in establishing a regional focus on implementing prescribed fire on the ground for habitat restoration, but also wildfire risk reduction, and has served as a regional support system for the sentinel landscapes that are designated in this region. More recently, SERPPAS launched the South Atlantic Salt Marsh Initiative in partnership with Pew Charitable Trusts. And last year, SERPPAS was awarded the 2023 Climate Adaptation Leadership Award for Natural Resources from the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. So each of these focus areas is supported by a work group lead. An example of that is Michelle for our coastal group, and a network of active partners beyond just the state and federal agencies that are identifying priority actions, pursuing projects, sharing lessons learned across that 6-state geography and beyond. The work groups function as our widest engagement opportunity. So they include people from NGOs, universities, again, states outside our footprint, installation staff, industry partners, and many more. So the hope is that these regional work groups allow for sharing, connections, and collaboration that result in greater benefits for all the interests represented in SERPPAS. And it also provides us the ability to identify higher level policy or program challenges that can be addressed by the SERPPAS leadership. So you can learn more about each of these on our website, and you can request to join on our website as well, or feel free to reach out directly to me. The second tool that SERPPAS utilizes is a good map. And so SERPPAS defines a good map as the use of the best available consistent data to depict priorities of a diverse group of partners that can be used to identify overlapping interests and areas where collaboration for mutual benefit can be achieved. So basically, a well-informed science-based map that can show overlapping priorities. The SERPPAS Good Map is represented by layers within the Department of Defense's Readiness and Environmental Protection Integration, or REPI, interactive map. And this is a public access tool for DoD and other partners to use in collaboration across the region. Just for a little bit of background, the REPI program is a key tool available to military installations to partner with external entities on projects that preserve compatible land uses and natural habitats outside their fence lines that help sustain critical at-risk military mission capabilities. So the purpose of this mapping tool is to provide partners with spatial information related to military installation locations, land use and census information, other relevant environmental or other data that can inform potential projects or partnership opportunities with Department of Defense. So SERPPAS has specific layers on this map that focus on the priorities of our partnership, such as a depiction of the military mission footprint across the Southeast that could be influenced by land use activities. And that's what you're looking at now. So that's a 3-mile buffer around the military installations, and that's low-lying special use airspace and military training routes that you're seeing on the map there. As well as longleaf pine priorities. We've got urban growth projections, sea level rise, and other data that can be used on this map. In particular, the Southeast Conservation Blueprint is also one of the layers that is visible on the map, as the conservation and restoration of habitats and species is a primary focus for SERPPAS. So as I mentioned before, SERPPAS recognizes the value of the SECAS partnership, as well as the amazing resource provided by the Southeast Conservation Blueprint. And we continue to look for ways to collaborate and ensure the great science is being used across the region to inform efforts with our installations. SECAS staff and the Blueprint were integral partners for the SERPPAS Good Map workshop that we held in 2018, and that actually informed the layers that I just described on the REPI map, as well as identified the need for additional mapping products like the Southeast Fire Map. The Blueprint has been used in support of the designation of multiple sentinel landscapes, in particular with their boundary determination and their conservation priorities, as well as helped inform individual installations with compatible land use planning and climate change planning. Most recently, SERPPAS has been engaging with SECAS and the Blueprint staff in preparation for our 2025 SERPPAS Principles meeting. 2025 is a significant year for SERPPAS as it marks the 20th year of the partnership. So we are utilizing this milestone to reflect on the past 20 years as well as envision the next 20. This includes a look at what the future holds for the Southeast, including what trends we're currently seeing, what trends may or may not continue, and what challenges we may be faced with that can inform SERPPAS future direction and help us continue that SERPPAS vision, a sustainable Southeast for all the partners. So we're very excited to be engaging the Blueprint staff expertise and the Blueprint itself to help us inform that future visioning. Before I pass it to Michelle, I think it's worth doing a bit of an explanation about Sentinel Landscape, since I've mentioned it a few times and not everyone may know about this program. Sentinel Landscape somewhat grew out of the DoD REPI program and expands the opportunities to conserve, restore, and protect lands and resources around military installations by purposefully leveraging the tools and programs that exist from other federal, state, and local partners. The partnership was officially established in 2013 through an MOU between the Department of Defense, the Department of Agriculture, and the Department of Interior, and is implemented by a federal coordinating committee with representatives from the agencies within those departments. So those agencies include REPI for DoD, NRCS and Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, and actually soon FEMA will be joining as well. The FCC designates locations around the country where the interests of conservation, working lands, and national defense converge. And each of these locations is anchored by one or more military installations and establishes a locally led network of partners that collaborate to accomplish the missions of this partnership. And those are to strengthen military readiness, conserve natural resources, bolster agricultural and forestry economies, increase public access to outdoor recreation, and enhance resilience to climate change. So you'll notice the goals of the Sentinel Landscapes program are very similar to the goals of SERPPAS, but are at a much more localized level to specific locations. So the SERPPAS geography includes 5 designated landscapes seen on the screen here. And SERPPAS really serves as a regional forum for sharing and collaboration across these landscapes, as well as support for their efforts at a regional level. So later on today, Michelle is going to touch on some of the efforts we've pursued in assisting the Sentinel Landscapes with climate resilience planning. And the SECAS blueprint has also played an important role in many of the local landscape efforts. So that's my piece to do kind of an overview, and now I'm going to hand it off to Michelle, and thank you guys all for having us.
Okay, so my name is Michelle Covi, and as Hillary said, I'm the Coastal Resilience DoD Liaison with University of Georgia Marine Extension Georgia Sea Grant. I'm sort of supported partly through DoD and also the National Sea Grant Office, which is, if you're not familiar with Sea Grant, is National Sea Grant is a collaboration between the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and university partners. So it's 34 programs around the United States coastal regions, including the Great Lakes and the territories of Puerto Rico and Guam. So it's a national network. Before I took this position, I was actually up in Virginia as the Virginia Sea Grant Coastal Resilience Specialist. So I kind of lived and breathed living in a defense community for 6 years. And then when I moved to Georgia, this position working with SERPPAS and with the REPI office and across the coastal regions made a whole lot of sense for me. Luckily, it made a lot of sense for them too. So here I am. Anyhow, so I've been in this position for about 3 years, although the Coastal Resilience and Regional Adaptation Working Group has been around before that. It's as Addie said, it's one of the 5 focus areas. What I've listed here is some of our strategic objectives, which we pursue through monthly meetings, similar to these types of meetings, virtual meetings that we have monthly, and also projects that the group has taken on as well. Over the last 3 years, the group has been actively supporting installation in communities as they've been challenged to conduct climate adaptation activities and pursue ways to support these tasks, and that in many cases have been added to a program of activities that has already been underway. So in about 2019, the Department of Defense really started trying to figure out how to implement some of the initiatives that had started some years before that required installations to prepare for climate change. And so we've been kind of supporting that. And as you know, in the last few years, it's been a time of unprecedented competitive support, primarily through initiatives driven by BIL funding. And so a lot of our partners have been looking at ways that they can partner with Department of Defense. And on the other side, the Department of Defense has been looking at ways to kind of support their particular partners and kind of target some of that funding towards the defense communities that they are so concerned about. So as we do this, we also look for ways to collaborate across these focus areas. You can tell these focus areas are not isolated. We all kind of overlap some of our initiatives and our ideas. And so all climate resilience touches all of these areas, and so we work across those. So we paired with Sentinel Landscapes Working Group and the Energy Development Siting Working Group to kind of look at those shared areas. So that's one of our key strategies as part of our strategic implementation plan, is to partner across those areas. So next slide, Addie. So one of the ways that DoD has been supporting community resilience is through funding climate projects in communities. And they've, as I said, since the 2019 National Defense Authorization, the DoD has had the authority to fund projects in communities that are climate resilience projects, but also support the DoD missions. And there are two main programs that fund these, one of which, the REPI program, which Addie has talked about a little bit already, but also the Office of Defense, the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation, we very affectionately called the old CC. And this program actually funds studies and other sort of policy initiatives. There's not quite as much on the restoration side, but it can be. I mean, there's also the possibility of funding nature-based solutions or projects that would also include some restoration component to it. So we've been supporting sort of both of these programs through the CROG, the Coastal Resilience and Regional Adaptation Work Group, and we've also been supporting REPI, joining with organizations like other federal agencies like NOAA, which they have in the National Coastal Resilience Fund that has funded a number of projects. REPI put about $15 million of funding into the National Coastal Resilience Fund. Federal agencies like NOAA, which they have in the National Coastal Resilience Fund that has funded a number of projects. REPI put about $15 million of funding into the National Coastal Resilience Fund over the last 2 to 3 years. I think this will be the third cycle when they designate those grantees, which should be in the next few months. And so those projects that have a DoD component can access that $15 million. But the goal is to actually match up these so that we match both the missions together. They've also put funding into the America the Beautiful Fund, which you've probably been maybe more familiar with, and also the Readiness and Recreation Fund with the National Park Service. So REPI's been working with these other agencies to fund some of those. And this 2003 Resilience Funding Guide is available on the REPI website if that's something of interest to you as well. So next slide. This is an example of one of the OLDCC projects that was funded in the region, the Low Country South Carolina Military Installation Resilience Review. This was the first of these types of projects in the region, although there have been several others, South Florida, Tampa Bay. Florida has been really on this opportunity to work across the community. Primarily, they work with local governments. In this case, it was the local government, Low Country Council of Governments that they worked with to help plan and prioritize projects. And then they generally, and this happened with the Low Country, they got some follow-up funding to actually do some design, which includes natural areas and this transportation route that you're kind of seeing in the back, which is at high tide is the only way to get out to Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Paris Island. So they're trying to support that access route, but also support the marshes that are getting increasingly impacted by sea level rise in that area as well. So you can see how what they're doing is they're kind of trying to prioritize, and particularly with the REPI program, it's got to be nature-based solutions. Not all the time with the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation. They have some project funding that can fund, gray infrastructure, but everybody's happy if it's kind of a partnership, so they can get both of these priorities, both the community and the ecosystem matched up to support each other. So next slide. So one of the other main support areas, so that's sort of supporting the community planning side. For the CROG, we've also had a lot of support for nature-based solutions, and these are some of the recent presentations that we've had that have focused on trying to look at, for instance, performance evaluations for living shorelines has been a real focus. And then the other focus area that's been emerging has been beneficial use of dredge material. And we've looked at, thin layer placement as a technique to support salt marsh, and also, the even larger island building or just generally the idea behind keeping the sediment in the system. So we've had several presentations about projects which align with the South Atlantic Salt Marsh Initiative, and that's on the next slide here, that is that kind of emerged from the CROG, but has a complete life of its own through support with Pew, and we're trying to do everything we can to kind of make sure that we line up and don't duplicate efforts. I don't know if SASME has talked with this group. If they haven't, it might be a good opportunity to have that group come and talk about the Marsh Forward Plan, which is available on their website. And this is a way that SERPPAS has been able to help translate some of the successes that you may be familiar with, in the forests, particularly the Longleaf Alliance, and kind of translate that into a coastal issue, particularly the 1 million acres of salt marsh along the South Atlantic, to try to see whether that same approach could address some of the threats that are facing the marsh in those areas. So we have been trying to align, some of our efforts. Many of these are policy efforts, and so in the next slide, one of the things that we spun off last year from our CROG group was a focus group that was particularly looking at nature-based solutions, regulatory needs, and best practices. So we kind of spun off this idea of a sub-work group that could have some intense work and discussion around regulatory needs. And this arose as the first issue that arose that stimulated the idea to have this sub-work group was around some permitting issues to do large living shorelines, particularly along the North Carolina coast at Cherry Point. And we had heard from our DoD partners the great amount of difficulty that they had getting permitting. And so we decided to take that on sort of as a regional approach. So we have this product. We now have a document with an overview of living shoreline permitting for 4 of our states. We didn't cover South Carolina and Alabama. Maybe we'll, if we see a need to have a supplement later, we may add that. But at this point, we've got over the last year, we kind of have this developed tool that can be used to better understand what the regulatory structure is for doing living shoreline permitting, but it also has some recommendations for ways both to navigate the program better as a project proponent for a living shoreline, whether that's DoD or a DoD partner, but also some recommendations of ways that maybe some policy changes might, facilitate a smoother process as well. So this is actually on our CROG website, which is a subset of the SERPPAS website, serppas.org, or we can send that out as a link to you if you're particularly interested in looking at this document. And now this group is also looking at is going to turn our eye to look at some beneficial use issues that we have heard in the area that can support coastal resilience and also habitat ecosystem resilience, as well as coastal resilience for the communities. So we're kind of going to focus on some of those issues in the future with that. And speaking of beneficial use of dredge material, the Navy has identified Naval Subbase Kings Bay in Georgia as sort of their sort of number one focus area. So that's one of the reasons that we're focusing in on that. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has a goal of 70% beneficial use by 2030. That's across the nation. So some areas of the nation are doing better than other areas of the nation. I think the Southeast is in the, I think it's like the 40% to 50% amount of beneficial use at this point. So trying to look at ways that can be used to further support habitat resilience and restoration, as well as coastal resilience, and could also include build infrastructure to protect that build infrastructure, or for some of that material to be used in build infrastructure that could be used for resilience as well. I think the best and highest use is to keep this material, in the system in some way. But this is kind of one of those deep dives that we're doing in the CROG. So just kind of stepping back, some of the work that we've done in the past in 22 and 20 and last year, we did a series of workshops with my Sea Grant colleagues across the Southeast, and really tried to generate some projects. And many of these projects that we brought together, DoD and project proponents through the Sea Grant lens, actually led to several proposals, some of which were funded by the National Coastal Resilience Fund or other avenues. And then following that workshop, early last year, we had a SERPPAS Sentinel Landscape Climate Resilience Summit. And I think Addie's on the right slide, yeah. And then in that case, the CROG and the Sentinel Landscape Work Group teamed up, led by Addie and also the SERPPAS facilitator Nancy Walters. We developed a meeting, and the purpose there was to advance climate resilience planning and implementation in Sentinel landscapes, with attention to both near-term smaller scale projects, similar to what I did in the SERPPAS Sea Grant meetings, but also moving towards more landscape level efforts. And that was one of the things that was really different about this workshop, was that sentinel landscape focus. And we learned there that capacity was a critical concern. That actually stimulated a number of efforts that were focused on addressing that staffing and funding needed in sentinel landscapes. So several of the sentinel landscapes in the Southeast now have climate resilience or are getting climate resilience focused staff. But this also helped to build relationships between the installations, the community, state resilience agencies were also there to make sure that all those resilience expertise was kind of brought together. We found out at this that, as you can see, that few installations have fully analyzed their climate risks. We hope in the succeeding now a year and a half since this summit has happened, some of that work has been done, and we've heard about it in some places, that the installations are going through a resilience planning process. In some cases, we've heard they're bringing in the communities and the constituencies outside the installations. In other cases, we've heard they're not doing as much of that. So we're hoping that more of them will do that. And then in my last slide here, just wanted to mention that Addie and I were involved with the Climate and Conservation Summit this summer. Sort of again a follow-up. We had the SERPPAS Sentinel Landscape Climate Resilience Summit. Actually, in the summer of 23, DoD had a national climate resilience summit, and then this summit was kind of like a very concentrated working group that was really looking for opportunities across, particularly DoD and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, for policies, tools and resources, training, education, and pilot project ideas that would be fundable, that would generate projects that would advance some of these different areas, so that we could address some of the climate and conservation crises in support of all the agencies' missions. And so with that, I'm sure there are abundant questions and discussion we can have. I would like to open it up.
Thank you so much, Michelle and Addie. That was a fantastic presentation. So many great connections. Thank you for the blueprint shout out. So yeah, we have had one question in the chat about sharing the link to the Living Shorelines document. Addie offered to drop that in the chat. We moved to Q&A, so I think if you could do that, that would be a big help, and any other resources that people might be interested in. But yeah, we've got probably 10 or 12 minutes for questions, so I'm happy to open the floor. Got a fair amount of people on the line, so I'll just ask that you maybe use the raise hand feature at the top, or drop your question in the chat. So I'll just pause and see if anyone wants to jump in.
I'm just dumping a whole bunch of websites in the chat that we mentioned just for folks' awareness, but and also a direct link. It is on the coastal page on SERPPAS, but I also put the direct link to that Living Shorelines document for ease. But yeah, just thought I'd throw a couple of those resources that we mentioned.
Yeah, I also did a document that I didn't mention earlier on. It's kind of like a guide to working with DoD if folks are interested. It's also on the CROG website. It was kind of the audience that I had in mind was my colleagues in Sea Grant, which, you know, DoD was brand new to a lot of my colleagues in Sea Grant. So a lot of them had questions like, how do I engage? You know, what do I do? So yeah, thanks, Addie. Addie popped it in there. So if that's something it's short, it might be of interest to folks looking to work with DoD.
Yeah, by all means. Sounds like a great resource. So here's a question from Maria in the chat. She was looking at the executive summary for Living Shorelines online and did not see the specific guidelines. She says, I know for the Marine Corps Cherry Point project, there were design concerns as well as resource impacts to federally listed species. Do the guidelines address the need to consult with federal agencies on this project?
Yeah, they do. And again, our primary author on this was one of our UGA partners, who is a law and policy expert. And so what he did was he broke down, if you open up the document, there is the executive summary, but in each of the state sections, he has sort of a box that has all of the regulatory agencies. He also has sort of a flow chart diagram, which is really kind of cool. I know they worked hard on it, so look at it. That shows, how the federal agencies and the state agencies in the coastal region work together. Like when you're working in the coastal region in particular, you have to work through the Coastal Zone Management Program, and this Coastal Zone Management Act is one of the primary. Oh, there you go. Perfect. So yeah, that's an awesome diagram. So it shows how you get the concept, and then you have to go through all the different federal agencies and state agencies. One of our advice was to, maybe these folks can kind of sit together, and in Living Shorelines, they have done a lot of this work. Actually, beneficial uses is a much earlier stage in this. It's a little bit different state by state. So if you're interested in the Cherry Point project in particular, you might want to look in the North Carolina section and look at the table there to kind of see, sort of what it's the other way, I think. Is it this? Yeah, the particular state. So there's the discussion of Cherry Point in particular, and sort of what happened in that case. And then he's got that chart there that shows the key agencies and federal offices. So I think that addressed your question in terms of the consultation needs.
Well, kind of a quiet group today, which is fine. Let me give one more pause, just in case anybody's being shy, and then I can move on with an update from staff and a preview of next month's web forum, and we can always stop at the end if anything's occurred to you in the meantime.
Well, I guess I could ask them a question, or Addie and I can ask them a question about, like, what do you all, we're looking to the future in the region. What are some of your number one concerns for the next 20 years? Is that what you were thinking, Addie, too?
Sure. Well, Julie, I came to listen to you talk, not to talk. No.
It's kind of a big question, so I understand the silence.
Yeah, we've got a suggestion in the chat. Go ahead, and Rua, you have the floor.
I was giving everyone else some time to jump in on that thing. I didn't feel like I talked to y'all enough, but yeah, I mean, I'll get the ball rolling. The big thing I think about in the next 20 years as a challenge is, how do we maintain and ramp up momentum of managing these open systems that so many of the species depend on? It's like we've made really good progress on longleaf, and we're seeing all these great things. Can we keep ramping that up and maintaining it, and then think about all these other systems like shortleaf and open oaks and grasslands? And so I think that's a big one, with so much of our diversity being dependent on these open habitats. Like, how are we going to ramp that up across the entire Southeast to meet the challenges that we're seeing, the significant headwinds we're seeing, and making that happen?
That's a great one. Kayla?
Hi, everyone. I did put it in the chat, but I think my biggest concern is sea level rise impacting vulnerable communities. I just recently graduated with my master's, and that was something that I wasn't super aware about until I, was in my master's degree. But I do actually have a question for you all. My fiance is in kind of cybersecurity stuff, and never did I think that cybersecurity and conservation would actually intersect, but they do in a lot of ways. And there's something that the Department of Homeland Security has called critical infrastructure. And I've kind of identified that as a gap in a lot of like what we do as conservation professionals and agencies. So I was curious if you guys have looked into working with the Department of Homeland Security, working with those that are in the critical infrastructure space. And if you haven't, I definitely, I see that as sort of a challenge for all of us, because educating ourselves on that is really important.
Yeah, I would say relative to FEMA, that's one of the reasons that I think Sentinel Landscapes has reached out to FEMA to be part of the federal coordinating committee, is to look at sort of the more human side of the component, and also to train them also on the nature-based solutions, right? Because they've been putting in a lot of or funding a lot of the gray infrastructure, and we understand that you got to sort of you're going to have both in a lot of cases. So Homeland Security was. I'm not sure I can say about cybersecurity, but Homeland Security to me means FEMA and Coast Guard. And both of those, like certainly my Sea Grant colleagues are always asking me about Coast Guard. They're like, we know Coast Guard. No one knows Coast Guard very, very well. But that's not, I end up saying, that's not part of the DoD funding that I'm familiar with unless they're co-located. But I do think there has been some movement I've heard about including Coast Guard, as part of the discussion. I don't know where that's going necessarily, but there was a fairly high level discussion about, hey, yeah, maybe Coast Guard needs to be part of this discussion too. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Michelle. I think that FEMA joining Sentinel Landscapes is a big opportunity for us as far as the folks that we work with in Department of Defense, which are on that more kind of external affairs and outside the fence line folks. I think DoD, other parts of DoD probably have stronger connections there than we do, but I see this as an opportunity, and I think we definitely want to take advantage of that in SERPPAS. We've engaged FEMA some and through the CROG, but we'd like to get them on our leadership if we could. So we're looking forward to kind of exploring that. The one thing I will say I've heard our DoD folks talk about is considering like foreign investments in land near critical infrastructure for DoD, and that's been something that's come up a little bit for us, but definitely I think I agree, an area that we could explore a little more and that we don't have much history on, but I think there's opportunities coming down the line as we expand these partnerships.
Definitely. I'm going to go to Alex and then Denise, and then I may need to cut things off just to make sure I don't hold anybody late when we have time for our closing stuff. So, Alex.
You got us moving now, Yeah. Well, I am curious, so I'm based in Georgia, and I think I have taken for granted kind of the literacy around Sentinel Landscapes being in Georgia being one of the older Sentinel Landscapes. And I'm curious, as I've been talking with more of our partners in other parts of the Southeast, they're kind of like, well, what is a Sentinel Landscape? How do we get one? And so I'm kind of curious. I know we've had a couple new ones come online in the last couple of years. Can you talk maybe a little bit more about SERPPAS's role in helping to establish new Sentinel Landscapes?
Yeah, and that's actually one of the objectives within our strategic plan is working with the already designated landscapes to help them share and communicate across each other. But then I help identify areas where we feel like there are more needed, and I'll say from a SERPPAS perspective, we're selfish in that like we want all the Sentinel landscapes. So we kind of provide this umbrella support to help bring partners along in what they are, how to, we share about the designation process, which is an official process that comes out from the FCC for an application and putting one together. We can help put partners who are interested in Sentinel Landscape designation in contact with currently designated ones to learn what they did and how they did that. There is the concept of like, if everywhere is a priority, nowhere is a priority. So it's not going to be the whole U.S. that is a Sentinel landscape. But I think the intention is I know the intention is most places can do what Sentinel Landscapes are doing if they want to, right? Of course, the Sentinel Landscapes designation comes with some benefits of a coordinator and other resources. But what's really great about Sentinel Landscapes is they can be kind of test beds and places for innovation that then we as SERPPAS can spread their good ideas and be like, you don't actually need anything extra to do this, but they've already figured out how to do this certain project or how to connect with a certain type of agency or whatever it is. So we see that as an opportunity to kind of spread their good ideas that they're testing out because they have these established landscapes. The thing I will say that I didn't mention when I just did a quick blurb about Sentinel Landscapes is that each one has a coordinator. So I can get you in touch with any coordinator that you're interested in talking with, and they're very interested in connecting with partners and explaining their missions. There is commonality between all the Sentinel Landscapes and their overarching mission, but each landscape has their own set of goals and objectives that are very based on their specific landscape, because each landscape and each encroachment issue for those military bases are different, so they're not exactly the same. So again, another network of people that I'd be happy to connect anyone with. Actually, I saw one on the line. Dana Bauer is the South Carolina Sentinel Landscape Coordinator. She's fairly new, but she's great. So I'm happy to share those kind of contacts as well, as far as learning more and messaging. I think that's something the Sentinel Landscapes program is working on always, is kind of that messaging piece and getting the word out of what that is. So it's evolving, but happy to help in any way.
I think it's good to know that you don't have to necessarily have a Sentinel Landscape to engage in this way with the defense community.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. Good question, Alex. Denise, I'm going to give you the last word. I might just ask you to keep it brief if you can. Thank you. In the meantime, I think I'll go ahead and wrap up with some updates and a preview of next month's webinar. So in October, we're going to be getting together on October 17th, same time, same connection information as today. We're going to be hearing from Lance Garrison, who's a research fishery biologist with the NOAA Southeast Fisheries Science Center. And he's going to be talking about the Gulf of Mexico Marine Assessment Program for Protected Species, or GOMAPS, which is a coordinated effort between NOAA, USGS, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. And it's dedicated to improving information on distribution, abundance, and habitat use of marine mammals, sea turtles, and birds in the U.S. Gulf of Mexico. And so these are all data sets that either are incorporated in the blueprint and are indicators of Gulf marine mammals and Gulf sea turtles, or in the case of the seabirds, one that we hope to incorporate in the future when that data becomes publicly available. And so Lance is going to be talking specifically about the marine mammals component, which feeds into the Gulf marine mammals indicator of the blueprint. And this is a data set that uses visual and acoustic survey data collected by boats and planes to estimate the abundance of 26 different species or species groups of marine dolphins and whales. And this feeds into the sea turtle data as well. So they've basically done some species habitat modeling, looking at the linkages between where these species are and the different habitats that they need and those environmental characteristics to develop these predicted models of where these species are going to be concentrated. And then again, we fed that into the blueprint. So I'm hoping to bring the sea turtle folks and the marine birds folks on to do a webinar as well in the new year, but we'll be starting out hearing about the marine mammals. So we're very excited about that. And then I have 3 quick updates from your SECAS staff. A couple of these I gave on the last web forum as well, but want to make sure that they're getting out there to folks. So the next version of the Southeast Conservation Blueprint is on track for release in the middle of next month, just a few weeks away. This blueprint update has incorporated some improvements to indicators in the continental Southeast, both on the inland and marine side, particularly a really great new indicator of grassland condition that looks at known, predicted, and historic grasslands. We've also improved some of our prioritization methods that we use with our zonation software that's going to improve kind of our computational speed and the balance of priorities across subregions. And then if you want to learn more about the blueprint, the latest version of the blueprint, you can tune in to our November web forum, which will be November 21st at 10 a.m. And that'll be featuring Ruel Mordecai, our science coordinator, who will talk all about what's new with this blueprint. If you would like to dig in and review that new blueprint, we are having blueprint workshops in the end of October and early November. We're having 13 virtual workshops. Each one is 1.5 hours long. It'll be hosted on Zoom, and we're moving these workshops till after the blueprint release so that everyone will have the benefit of all of that indicator data and documentation at their fingertips and better understand what's driving those priorities to inform their feedback. So this is a critical part of our blueprint revision cycle. This is where we hear what's working well and what's not, and we feed that into the improvements that we make year after year as we continue to update the blueprint. So this feedback that we collect at workshops will start influencing the 2025 blueprint update and beyond. So I might ask if another member of SECAS staff who's on the phone could drop that workshop link in the chat for me, and that's where you can go to register. And then lastly, I want to hand off to Rua to give a quick update on the goal report, which is scheduled for release in January.
Yep. So goal report, we're making really good progress on it. And so this is where we look at recent trends in southeastern ecosystems. How are we doing related to the SECAS goal? So we've got some new bird indicators, much finer resolution trends using some new analysis from eBird. So we're really excited about that place. And then we also have a new grassland and savanna area indicator that will get it changes. We've been digging through those data, lots of cool stuff and interesting discussions related to that. And then we've been updating a few other things. We get another year of data from prescribed fire and longleaf pine, and we're updating the undeveloped land and corridors. So that's really cool. We're doing great stuff. It's going to go through some of the points of contact reviews, some other reviews, and we're also working on getting it up in a public-facing dashboard so you can be a little more interactive and seeing all the cool data and information. So very excited to share some cool stuff for this year. Here's a quick visual of those bird trends. So you can see when I'm talking, that's, for trends, that's actually way finer than we've ever had. And so this is some of the cool stuff we're going to have coming up in the goal report.
Thanks, Rua. Yeah, so stay tuned for that. And then I always close on this slide, how to get more involved in SECAS. Love to have you sign up for our newsletter. You can do that on the footer of any page of our website, secassoutheast.org. That will get you signed up for our once monthly newsletter and a monthly reminder email about this web forum, so you never miss a topic that you're interested in. Of course, you can connect with your SECAS staff. You can find their contact information and bios on our staff page or other partners who are participating in SECAS. And of course, we would love to have you check out the Southeast Blueprint. Use it, let us know how it's working for you, and please reach out for help if you would like some support in incorporating it into a conservation plan, a decision, a proposal. There's user support staff available to help you for free. So we would love to see you at a workshop next month or the following. And thank you all so much for tuning in. Huge shout out to Addie and Michelle for a fantastic presentation today. So much great work y'all are doing. We're so thrilled to partner with you guys. So.
Thank you for having us.
Yep, everyone take care. Have a great weekend and hope to see you in October. Bye.